are Geekcentric, and you can be too. Love ya. Get home safe, guys. Peace.
Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our special Behind the Geeks for Alien Romulus, which hits theaters August 16th. A huge thanks to our friends at 20th Century Studios Canada for setting up this interview. I had the opportunity to sit down with Fede Álvarez, the writer, the director, and producer of Alien Romulus, who's also known for his films like Evil Dead, Don't Breathe 2. Fede Álvarez is a renownedly well-known genre horror film director. He's done some great work. So to have the opportunity to sit down and talk to him about stepping into the Alien franchise was a pretty big deal, and I'm very humbled at the opportunity that I had to chat with him. And we talked about everything from from the big news at SDCC a couple weeks ago, to practical effects, to, just bringing the movie back to a sense of horror. And when in the filmmaking process, he starts to really feel the emotions he's putting into his work. And if you want to watch this interview, you can do so on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/geekcentric. We got a ton of other interviews there. We got a lot of interviews on our podcast feed as well. We also got a lot of D23 coverage. We just got back from the D23 Disney convention. All of our coverage is out now. We've been kind of dropping little bits here and there on our social. You can check those out on our Instagram at We Are Geekcentric, as well as on our TikTok, also at We Are Geekcentric. But we also have our whole recap episode for the convention out now for you to enjoy. We talk about all the big surprises from that big studio panel on Friday night from Marvel, Lucasfilm, Disney Animation, Disney Studios, as well as the insights from the parks panel, as well as learning a little bit more about the Disney legends and what that convention was like for us, because it was our first time going to D23, and we had some thoughts. It's a really great episode. We did it very quick and dirty, all in the hotel room at once, so it's definitely one worth listening to. But, when it comes to conventions, we're about to hit the big one for Toronto. That's Fan Expo Canada. We have been accredited as press. We are going to be there all weekend, covering the events, hopefully getting some interviews. Fingers crossed we got one coming. But you'll definitely want to make sure that you're subscribed to us wherever you listen to podcasts, and as well on our YouTube channel. So a lot of stuff upcoming. But for now, here's my interview with Fede Álvarez, director of Alien Romulus. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. How are you?
All good.
Good
to be here.
We have the opportunity to talk to you. I saw you were at Comic-Con this weekend.
That's great.
What was it like showing your footage in that massive audience?
It was a pleasure. That's, you spend so much time making this movie inside a cave, and no one can see anything. And so that's what we were all waiting for. Me and the cast, we couldn't wait to watch the footage with an audience and get that energy from them. It's the best.
I can imagine it's also like a big sense of relief to share it with other people. Like you said, you've been kind of in silos working on this movie for so many years.
We're really proud of it as well. Sometimes we're more nervous about, they're going to, we were all confident they're going to enjoy it. And thank God we were right.
Yeah, and it seems like fans are loving what they saw. It feels so holistically a part of the original series, and especially where you've decided to situate the story in between 1 and 2. Why was it so important, though, to kind of bring this film back to a place where it feels like holistically like a horror movie?
I think it's a natural tendency for any artist, and same with the franchise, to evolve, right? Like the James Cameron brings something different that Ridley did, and then David Fincher take it somewhere else, and that's what the natural progression of a franchise should be. But then it happens the same as with some artists, right? Like some bands you love, you always want them to go back to the roots of the first 2 albums,
Absolutely.
And artists, sometimes they don't want to do that. It's just they're on their journey of evolution and they take it somewhere else. But, given the chance to steer this in the direction I wanted, all I wanted was go back to those first 2 movies in a way. And that's why we set it in the middle of Aliens, so it could be a perfect amalgamation of those styles and tell a story that Didn't necessarily need you have seen all the other ones. I think if you have, fantastic. You will make so many connections.
Absolutely.
But if you haven't, wow, I'm jealous of that person that can walk into a theater and be exposed in 2 hours to all these best ideas of 45 years of movies, combined in one.
Right.
What an intense experience that is, right?
Yeah, and there's some things that are feeling fresh and new too. There's a heist vibe that seems sort of pseudo laid into this story that is going to be very interesting, and the cast of characters is really, really interesting. They're younger, outside of their age. How does this cast differ?
Well, they're definitely, just because they're younger, it's a completely different experience for them. The way the other characters in other movies experience the story, right? Because they're more adults, they think differently. It's just a different approach to deal with the problem automatically. Also, for horror, as a rule of thumb, usually the younger they are, the less you want to see them die. So there's something about horror that is always more effective with young people. But I was just personally really interested in those characters. There's a deleted scene on Aliens where you can see a bunch of young kids running around the colony. I remember watching that and thinking, wow, like what would it be for those kids to grow up in that colony? What would they do when they're in their 20s? So they just stay there and accept that there's two lines of work you have, either you're a miner or you're a farmer, and that's it. Like naturally, young people want to break free, wants to do crazy things to get out of that reality. So they felt like dangerous characters right away, just to follow them around, doing whatever it takes to get out of that reality was something that it was a clear path for the story once we have them.
Yeah, and it seems like they have a relationship with one another, which might not necessarily be as common in past films. They're almost colleagues, researchers, working together. Yeah. But there seems to be more of an emotional stake and a bit more of a heart to the cast of characters, so that we care about them as an audience member. When inevitably they go. You know what I mean?
That I think is a good thing of the evolution of the genre in the last few years. That it had to be a time where there was never time to dig in a little bit on who they are. In the first few movies, you really know anything about the characters. Very basics, their names, what they do, what's their job. But then everybody wants the same thing, wants to survive the creature, and you don't get to know too much about them. Right. With the movies, there was a bit more time to get to know some characters, but it's always been quite superficial. And here, it's just a deeper dive on who they are and their relationships, and the relationships are a massive part of the story.
Right.
So here, because if someone dies here, it might be your brother, your cousin, your loved one. Yeah. So it makes for better horror, it makes for better drama. But yeah, it's definitely one of the most dramatic stories, I think, for the alien world.
Yeah, it definitely raises the stakes too, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways when you care about the relationship of these characters. Yeah. Now, you mentioned, obviously, the visual effects. There's a lot of practical effects, which, thank you. It's amazing to kind of return to that as well as returning to this world and this franchise. Yeah. I want to ask, and it might seem a little silly to ask this, but is it harder to get studios on board with practical effects versus CGI and visual effects? Like, there's a lot of ease and purpose, and obviously from what we've seen, there's a balance. There's such a beauty in the balance of practical and visual. Yeah. Is it harder to get studios on board?
It is, but not because they don't believe in it. It is because they have trust that path in the past, and it has not worked. Because the hardest part is not to build the practical effects. To say let's go practical is the easy part. To really deliver is the hard part, and that requires many parts. One is to be able to have the artists behind the creations of the creatures that can do it. They can do it at that level that it becomes uncanny, that you really believe is a real living, breathing thing. Yeah. But that's half of it. The other half is to know how to shoot it. You need to have the right team. They have DP and a director that knows how to bring them alive in the camera, and that's what fails a lot of times. So that's why there's a lot of times the intention, and then at some points gets replaced in CG because it didn't work on the day, and that's why the studios a lot of times like let's not pay double for it. Let's look at the creature and then pay for the CG version. So the studio took a leap of faith with us to let us, okay, let's see if you can pull it off. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, based on the stuff you watch, you believe we did.
Oh, you 100% did. That was what really connected with me. I'm a huge fan of Evil Dead, what you did with that. It reimagined the franchise. And I watched an interview where you once said, you make movies to make people feel shit. So I wanted to know, in the filmmaking process, when do you start to feel it? When do you start to feel that fear and that sort of dread? When does that start to hit for you?
I don't think I feel I never make it. I feel it in the writing. The writing usually is a moment where I can really go there, and because I have to in order to work, all I can do is draw from my own ideas of what's scary, right? So that means what scares me, right? So I have to really go there, and usually it's the writing when you have those hunted moments, and you go, "Fuck, okay, here we go. This is what we're doing now. This is what's going to happen next." And me, my co-writer, will go, "Is like, are we daring to do this? Is this what's going to happen?" And we know, well, that's the tough thing. It's the harder thing can happen to the characters. Then that's where we're going to go. Right. And usually it's in the writing. Then on the shooting is more through other people's eyes. You know, you see a lot of times the characters don't know. My actors read the script, but they don't know how it's going to look like. Right. There's a creature, there's something in it. They know it will be there at the end of the hallway, but they don't know it. And usually I stop them from seeing it. I don't want them to see it until we're shooting. So I might say action, and the character will walk in down the hallway. And when you see their reaction, a lot of times it's a real reaction to see the thing moving and being alive, and that's when I can see that it's effective, when I see them, their true horror in their eyes. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that that gives you that sense of validation of like, this is working. Yeah. This is definitely working. Well, again, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us on the Geekcentric podcast, and thank you for coming to Toronto, and sharing your time here to do this in person. It really means a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the movie.
Thank you, man.